So I've been told by friends that I've got some pretty good hiking stories. And since I can't go back and really have those experiences again, I thought it'd be fun to do like a storyteller series where I talk about, some of my more exciting hikes, and I'll intercut photos from those trips and things like that so I can kind of take you along with me down memory lane. So this is the first crack at Storytime with Goatlord. Late January of 2014, my friend Rob and I had planned on going on an overnight snowshoeing trip from Spooner Lake to Marlette Lake near the Tahoe Rim Trail. And at the last minute, Rob had to bail. And by last minute, I mean I was already at the trailhead. So I decided to go ahead and take the trip. The original plan was to go through this canyon that went from Spooner Lake to Marlette Lake, and it was a relatively easy hike, and then we'd kind of weave our way up the hill to the Marlette campground and stay the night there. After Rob bailed, I decided to make the trip a little more difficult, and I went up over Snow Valley Peak. And the whole way up there was no snow, and I was getting kind of upset that I was carrying my snowshoes and all this extra gear, and there was no snow. And I'd stopped for lunch at the top of Snow Valley Peak and ran into a couple other hikers who were coming the other way, and they told me that there was just a ton of snow going the other direction. So I started my way down the hill, and sure enough, tons of snow. And navigating in the snow, is always a little more difficult than navigating when you can see your path. But I had a map and compass, and I had my GPS app on my phone, and so I thought I could manage it pretty well. And there were plenty of other tracks. I found another set of snowshoe tracks that looked like they were going exactly the same way I was. And so every 45 minutes to an hour, I would stop, check the map and compass, check the GPS, and every single time I stopped, these tracks were going exactly the way I needed to be. So it got kind of later in the day, and I got a little bit lazier about checking the map because, every single time these tracks were headed exactly where I needed to be, every single time. So 45 minutes to an hour kind of became every 2 hours, which kind of became whenever I felt like I might be a little lost. And I stumbled across this sign that says Marlette Campground 1 mile. I'm like, okay, great, there's a mile. The pace I'm going, that should be about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. So I started trekking off in the direction that the snowshoe tracks I'd been following were going. And, an hour went by, and no campground. An hour and a half went by, no campground. And then another 15 minutes went by, and still no campground, and the sun had started to set. And so I stopped, and I checked the map, and I checked the compass, and I checked the GPS, and I had no idea where I was at all. I couldn't find any landmarks. I couldn't find any points of reference. I was pretty thoroughly lost. And so I thought to myself, well, I'll just follow my footprints back to that sign that said Campground 1 mile, and then I'll look at the map again there and see if I can't navigate my way up to the campground. So I start hiking out, following my footsteps, no big deal, and it starts to dump snow. Just massive, like silver dollar sized flakes. And each minute that passes, there were fewer and fewer footsteps until they were gone. And at this point, the sun had set, and I was trekking through the snow with just a headlamp in the dark. And honestly, was getting pretty nervous and pretty scared. And I thought, the best thing I could do is just find a place to camp, and I'll work it out in the morning. So I hiked a few more feet, and I came to this nice dry patch where, for some reason, the snow wasn't sticking, and the old snow had melted off. So I set up camp there. Boiled some snow to replenish my water, and just settled in for a pretty sleepless and uncomfortable night. It's hard to sleep when you don't know where you are and you don't know what's going to happen. And in the morning, I woke up and I located the sign again that said Marlette Campground 1 mile, and from there I was able to use the map and the compass and find some points of reference. And guide my way back through and decided to go back down through the original canyon that Rob and I had planned on hiking instead of going back up over Snow Valley Peak. And made my way back to the car, and all's well that ends well. But the biggest takeaway I got, the biggest lesson I learned from that trip was that when you're lost, just stop. Just stop and find some kind of shelter. If you keep going and panic, you're just going to make things much, much worse for yourself. Well, that is my getting lost while snowshoeing story. I hope you enjoyed it, and I've got a couple more of these planned, and I'm always out hiking and I'm always creating new stories, so I think this story time with Goatlord could be an ongoing series. We'll see how it happens. We'll talk again soon.